Greetings, fellow book lovers, and welcome back to Colin's Corner. Today we will be doing a spoiler-free review of the Liveship Traders Trilogy by Robin Hobb, but before we get into the review, we have to go over the answer for the last Comedy with Colin segment, where I asked you guys to joke, what's so great about living in Switzerland? The answer? I don't know, but the flag's a big plus. Alright, with that out of the way, let's move on to this review. Now, I just want to preface this by saying that this is the second sub-series in the greater realm of the Outerlings series, so there could be spoilers that I mention in terms of characters or plot events that happened in the Farseer trilogy, but this will be spoiler-free in terms of the Liveship Traders trilogy. So I just wanted to give you guys a fair warning that if you haven't read Farseer yet, and I don't think there's anything too spoiler in here, but I wanted to bring that to the table so that you guys were aware of that before we get going here. The Liveship Traders trilogy follows a completely new cast of characters from the Farseer trilogy and is set in the same world, but we get to explore some completely different areas of the map that were kind of mentioned subtly or in passing in the Farseer trilogy, or more or less just as like water cooler talk. Now, I finished the Farseer trilogy last summer, and I have kind of been kicking the Liveship can down the road a little bit because, admittedly, I was sort of being a sore loser about not getting to read about Fitz Chivalry and the crew from the Farseer trilogy and the Six Duchies. These feelings of doubt were very, very quickly assuaged, and I really wish I would have listened to everybody that was urging me to get to the Liveship Traders sooner than I did. Now, the Liveship Traders trilogy is comprised of Ship of Magic, Mad Ship, and Ship of Destiny. Now, we begin with Ship of Magic, where we are introduced to the Vestrit family in Bingtown. As we learned in Farseer, Bingtown is a trading town, and it was essentially founded by criminals, outcasts, and descendants of the like being given land grants by the satrap of Jamalia. And Jamalia is more or less the ruling empire to the south of the Six Duchies. So we soon get to experience the cultural differences between the northern and the southern parts of this world that Robin Hobb has created. If you have read the Farseer trilogy, then you are already familiar with Robin Hobb's incredible talent for characterization, and it was displayed in an even more impressive manner, in my opinion, here in the Liveship Traders trilogy. Now, the Vestrit family is one of Bingtown's oldest and most respected trading families. The main reason that the Vestrit family and other noble trading families are so well respected in Bingtown is because of their use of family live ships. Now, live ships are basically ships that are made of a special kind of wood referred to as wizard wood, and certain properties of this wizard wood allow for a pretty amazing phenomenon to take place where these ships will actually quicken and they will become sentient beings. And I know it sounds a little wacky, but trust me, it is really incredible to read about this entire process unfolding. Within the Vestrit family, we have Ephraim Vestrit. He is the patriarch of the family and husband to Ronica Vestrit, and he is also the captain of the Vestrit family live ship named Vivacia. Ephraim and Ronica have two daughters named Kefria and Althea. Now, Kefria is married to a man from the slave state of Chalcid named Kyle. Kefria and Kyle have 3 kids together. They have Wintro, Malta, and they have Selden. Kefria has grown up striving to work the Vestrit farmland and kind of maintain order at home, and has followed really closely in her mother Ronica's footsteps. And Althea is the one that is expected to be inheriting the Vestrit family live ship Vivacia. She has basically grown up out on the high seas with their father Ephraim. Some of the other characters that we come to know over the course of this series are Brashen Trell. He is of the Trell trading family. We get to know Amber. She is this enigmatic, intricate wood carver that sells her wares in the Bingtown marketplace. Rain Kupris of the Rain Wilds, and last but not least, we have Captain Kenneth of the Pirate Isles. Over the course of this trilogy, the journeys that Robin Hobb takes each of these characters on individually is like nothing I've ever read before. No author has been able to successfully get me to switch camps on whether or not I like or dislike or am pulling for or pushing against these characters than Robin Hobb has been able to do. It is tough for me to even choose a favorite character, but I will say that I suppose if there was a main character in this, it would probably be considered Althea. I think she probably gets the most page time out of anybody, but we do follow a lot of characters, some that I haven't even mentioned here, but I do want to just dig a little bit deeper into a few of the characters that really stuck out to me over the course of this series personally. To start with, I would like to talk about Paragon. Now, Paragon is actually one of the live ships that we get to meet in the series. He's a bit of a wild card when we first get to meet him, but he has a level of depth that I could never have imagined possible when reading about a ship. He is woefully misunderstood, has spent many years completely lonely, and I remember just immediately being drawn to him and wanting to know more about him, wanting to learn about his history, what made Paragon become the way that he was when we were introduced to him in the series. From feeling almost kind of like a throwaway character when we first get to meet Paragon, he ends up having one of, if not the most compelling character arcs of anybody or anything by the end of this trilogy. And mind you, yes, I am still talking about a ship. Next, I feel the need to talk briefly about Malta. Now, I had decided after the first book that she was, during the first book, that she is one of the most easily dislikable characters that I can remember reading in recent times. Now, every time we got a Malta POV, especially in Ship of Magic, the first book, I was internally and even literally externally at times rolling my eyes at some of the thoughts that went through her head and some of the decisions that she would make and her motives behind her actions. I was 100% dead set on disliking Malta, and I had decided firmly that there was nothing that Robin Hobb would be able to do to get me to like this character, to redeem this character for me. By the end of Ship of Destiny, I was eating the biggest piece of literary humble pie that I have ever eaten, because Malta was without a doubt one of my favorite characters to read about by the time this series was all said and done. Lastly, in terms of individual characters that I want to touch on, we come to the pirate captain, Kennet. Now, Kennet is not only one of the most realized and well-written characters in this series, in my opinion, but Kennet is an example of some of the best character work that I've ever read in fiction. The depth to Kennet feels almost endless, and I have found myself still thinking about him frequently after finishing this series. In the beginning, I was just so intrigued by Kennet because I couldn't quite put my finger on what he was. Was he a villain? Was he a good guy? Should I like him? Should I be pulling for him or should I not be? I didn't know if he was maybe somewhere in between and was just a kind of a gray character. The emotional roller coaster that I rode with Kennet is so difficult to put into words. He would go from insufferable to funny to intimidating to psychotic to manipulative, all within the same chapter. I spent most of this series really wanting to love Kennet, but there was part of me that was holding myself back because I just didn't fully trust him as a character to not let me down or really make me angry by some action that he chose to take. And I was so close to giving in on countless occasions over the course of the trilogy and just loving Kennet, but I never quite got there. And the amazing thing about this is that the same effect that Kennet had on me as a reader was almost paralleled to how he made the other characters in this book that had interactions with him feel. If there's one thing that I've come to realize about Robin Hobb is that there are no such things as throwaway characters in her world and in her writing. If I read closely enough, or take the time to reflect after having read, or take part in discussions about her works, there's almost always a way that I can take a character that felt like a throwaway character and figure out a way that they actually were very important to the plot and propelled the story forward. Not in a cheap way either, like they were just thrown in as a plot device. Hobb has a way of incorporating all of the characters that she mentions and really gives page time to, into having them have a real effect on how the story plays out. And that's one of my favorite things about Robin Hobb's writing. This is one of a few series or books that I have read so far that spends a lot of time in a nautical setting. Now, we travel to many different islands and lands around the Cursed Shores, and we get a taste of what it would be like to live aboard the decks of a ship, a pirate ship, a slave ship, a trading vessel, what it would be like to pull into port and, drop your anchor and just stay a few days in a foreign town, find the local tavern, figure out what kind of stuff they sell, what kind of stuff you could trade, what kind of goods you can get that might be foreign to you, and what kind of goods you can give to these people that might be foreign to them. I found it extremely interesting to imagine what life on a ship would be like, because I hadn't really given much thought to it before being immersed in this world. There's all the excitement that comes with planning a long journey and finally setting offshore with your crew. We get firsthand looks at how different captains run different vessels throughout the series, and that was really cool. We are also, though, able to feel and see the cramped and virtually no privacy lifestyle that comes with spending your almost entire time, unless you're in port, living on a ship. For all the awesome, really fun moments and the feeling of freedom of just being out on the open waters, Robin Hobb makes sure to remind us just how difficult it really would be to spend your entire life on a ship, day and night, and being cramped with the same people, relationships getting strained just simply because of, physical distance or lack thereof, rather. It's not simply as easy as these trading family captains leaving their wives and their children at home to manage all of the stuff at home and going out and having really fun adventures. No, this was a very different kind of difficult. I imagine these captains trying to manage entire crews of people that are just sick and tired of doing the same chores and the same tasks to keep the ship up and running every day. And it just felt really realistic, the way that these characters responded to different events that would happen on board and stuff like that. I found extremely interesting to read about. Speaking of life at home in Bingtown, this is where we get to experience some of the politics that play out behind the scenes in this world. Now, there are traders' council meetings that are held to discuss decisions that will affect Bingtown and their relationship with the areas and territories surrounding them, such as Chalced, the Chalced states. We have Jamalia, we have the Rain Wilds, which we finally get to experience in this series. And at first, I was not as invested in this aspect of the series, but the more that the series progressed and the deeper these discussions and these issues that were coming to the table were, the more interested I found myself in this part of the story while we were off the decks of all these ships. And so I think that this part for me at the beginning wasn't quite as interesting, but it really, really grew on me as this series progressed. Robin Hobb touches on a plethora of themes over the course of this trilogy. She dives deep, pun intended, into themes such as family, self-discovery, racism, classism, emotional and physical abuse, addiction, greed, gender equality and gender roles and gender expectations, and slavery, just to name a few. I guess that's more than a few, but she does not write about these themes with a heavy hand. Rather, the themes are kind of interwoven into the characters' relationships with each other and with the characters' relationship with the world around them. I never feel like, and this was true in the Farseer trilogy as well, I never feel like I'm being preached to or spoon-fed anything by Robin Hobb. What she does more is present the scenario, present the interaction, present the world event, and let the reader, she really has a lot of trust in the reader once given the facts to make their own conclusions. And that is something that I really admire about her writing style as well. This series also has some subtle and not so subtle references to events that happen in the Farseer trilogy, and I spent a lot of time trying to piece together how these seemingly unconnected events and unconnected storylines would tie back into the overall series. And when we get some of these payoffs in the Liveship Traders, they are some of the most rewarding moments in the entire series. I could go on and on about the series for hours, and in fact, I did do this on multiple occasions. So, Books with Benghis Khan and I alternated hosting live discussions on our channels for all three books in this series. And then Ben and I both joined Derry on her channel. Derry's read it before, for a spoiler-filled discussion of this entire trilogy. So if you're interested in hearing mine, Ben's, and Derry's overall thoughts of the Liveship Traders trilogy, I will link those discussions in the description of this video for you to go ahead and check out. One last thing that I do want to touch on, because I just feel the need to, and there are not any trigger warnings in the beginning of any of these books. There is a scene. There is a rape scene that happens in Ship of Destiny. It is one of the most difficult scenes that I've ever read. It made me so angry at multiple characters in this book, and it had nothing to do with it being over the top, gross, or anything like that. It was just so real, and it made me so angry that I literally had to walk away from the book for a night and just kind of decompress and then come back to at a later date. But I felt the need to let anybody who's watching this know that, because if you are somebody who has unfortunately gone through any type of sexual abuse or emotional abuse or anything along those lines, I just want you to know that that is in there and to be prepared for it. To kind of just quickly wrap up my thoughts, the Liveship Traders is one of my favorite trilogies that I have read to date. Now, I have a buddy that is reading The Realm of the Elderlings alongside me, and he's about a book or so behind, and he keeps asking me, after finishing Liveship, what's your favorite trilogy between the Farseer trilogy and the Liveship Traders? And it's such a difficult question to answer, because objectively speaking, Liveship Traders is a just better cohesive narrative. I loved Farseer, don't get me wrong, but I think objectively that the Liveship Traders is just one of the best trilogies that I've ever read, cover to cover. But I love Fitz and the characters in Farseer so much that I'm just going to have to cop out and say that I love them both for different reasons. And if you are somebody who found Realm of the Elderlings and you're considering skipping over Liveship just to read the Fitz books, I would strongly urge you to consider what you would be depriving yourself of if you choose to do that. I highly recommend reading the Liveship Traders trilogy. And I think in the end, if you're planning on reading the entire series, it will certainly be well worth the read. If you have read the Liveship Traders trilogy, then let me know in the comments what your overall thoughts were and who your favorite character was by the end of the trilogy. Before we go, we have to do comedy with Colin, of course. Today's joke is going to be, why couldn't the Melons get married? If you think you know the answer, drop it down in the comments below. I know this was a little bit of a longer video, but I had a lot of thoughts that I wanted to unpack regarding this series. So if you're still here watching, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I hope you guys are all enjoying what you're currently reading. And remember, you're always welcome in Colin's Corner.